Give us a quarterback who you think is going to get off to a hot start to the season.
So I think it's a guy that people are generally down on right now, and that's CJ Stroud. Just a brutal season last year. Finishes as the QB 31 in fantasy points per game, which doesn't even seem real. Like when you look it up, it seems so strange after that rookie season, because after his rookie year, he was a QB 10 overall. He did that in year one. And I think we all expected big things last season. And then there were a lot of reasons for it, but takes a major step back. And I do talk about strength of schedule a lot. I mean, I did my strength of schedule matrix several weeks back, might even been like a month ago now. And I've done that for several years. And if you look back, and again, this is just one factor, one variable, but if you look back at that rookie season, he had the 12th easiest strength of schedule and he had a good year. Last year, 27th hardest schedule and he struggles. Now this year, the second easiest fantasy schedule among quarterbacks. So I think that sets the stage for him to be a little bit better. And then early in the season, there's going to be a lot of things working in his favor, right? They've gone to great lengths to update that, or to upgrade that receiving core, right? You have Christian Kirk now there to go along with Nico Collins, of course, but Christian Kirk there, the slot demon, as one of the defenders on the Texans referred to him. I don't know if you've ever used slot demon in reception perception, but that term is going to have to get in there now for sure. Yeah, it's a good one. And then the rookies, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, those guys are going to give them some depth. So even if there is an injury, it's not going to be like last year where we're down to Nico Collins and not much else, or maybe even less than Nico Collins because he missed some time last year. You have some uncertainty in the backfield. Joe Mixon, is he going to be healthy? We've talked about that on the show. We don't really know. They've been kind of cagey about what his recovery timeline is going to be. So if he's out at the beginning of the year, and the way they've talked about Nick Chubb doesn't exactly sound like Nick Chubb is going to be the same guy that we've seen in the past. Can Woody Marks step in? It's probably going to be some sort of committee. But still, if you don't have that true lead back, will they have to pass a little more? I think they probably will, right? I think that's a big factor in this. And then you look at the schedule in the opening months, right? Just such a favorable opening stretch. They faced 4 defenses that are ranked inside the top 13 for fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks last year. The Rams, the Bucks, the Jags, and the Titans. They were 11th, 4th, 2nd, and 13th in terms of the easiest matchups for fantasy quarterbacks last year. Certainly, they've all gone out and tried to do some things to improve on that. But I think we're looking at those defenses as ones that at least are going to be able to be attacked through the air. I do have some concerns about the Texans' offensive line, of course. I mean, how can you not, right? They weren't great last year. They've lost a couple guys. I think this is a work in progress. So that could be a bit of an issue early in the season as they're trying to figure that out. But overall, I think there's enough pointing us to the volume being there, to Stroud bouncing back. I think he is going to have a pretty solid September, and then you'll be able to make a decision from there if you want to trade him out and, get rid of him high, or if you're in a Guillotine league, maybe that could just carry you through the first month, and then somebody else will be available on the waiver wire that you can pick up.
I mean, you do a lot of the strength of schedule analysis, obviously, and you've had a bunch of great pieces that I may or may not have, looked at as we were prepping for this show to see like some of your notes on these guys you might be talking about here. So how much do you weigh sort of just the volatility year to year of defense when trying to kind of predict this? Because that's what we always say, right? Like from just a general NFL standpoint, like offense is more consistent year to year. You can have like guys take step backs or take steps forward as an individual unit, but defense is usually the one that's a little bit more volatile. So when you're looking at that, like how do you kind of, how do you sort of view that from a year to year basis?
So I'm factoring in both. I'm factoring the historical data from last year, and then I'm also looking at the different upgrades, players that they've gained, players that they've lost, and kind of coming up with my own metric for what I think it's going to look like this season. And then I'm using both of those in there with a bunch of other things, of course. But when you're just talking about the defenses, I'm making sure that we're factoring in for what has happened in the past, because we know those things tend to be fairly predictive. They're going to change year over year, but it does have some predictive nature as long as you're not going too far back. And that was a mistake that I made early in my career where I try to go back 3, 4, 5 years. And I quickly realized that is a waste of time and it's going to lead you down the wrong path for sure. But yeah, some of it is an educated guessing game, of course, right? And we're going to get some of that wrong, like I'm saying. I think it's a lot harder, though, as the season goes along to project that strength of schedule versus these early weeks of the season. Like the Rams defense, for example, is one that I think this year could come out and be a much, much better unit. The Bucks, how many seasons have the Bucks been a team that you can just pass on? Like they've been that pass funnel for many, many years. I don't think that's necessarily going to change. The Jags, the Titans, they still have a ways to go here before I think we could look at them as secondaries that I think we're going to be that scared of having our quarterbacks or our pass catchers go against. So overall, I think that's a really nice opening slate for Stroud. And, we'll see if they can solve some of those problems on the offensive line, which I think is the main issue that they're going to have this season.
Yeah, our mutual friend Sigmund Bloom always talks about like the big reveal, in the first few weeks of the season, where like some of these units that we have big questions about, we just immediately see like, oh, this is going to go exactly how the team thought. Versus, this little whatever they've been selling us in the offseason is not going to work. You come back to like. It's just certain defenses that I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like they immediately just come out and they're a much better unit than you think. And I think the four that you have targeted here or the four just opening defenses for the Texans are really interesting because I think all four of those secondaries are probably not going to be great. Right. They're probably going to be pretty generous secondaries to passing games. We'll see what Travis Hunter does as a cornerback in Jacksonville. But I mean, that one could be interesting, but it's still a first-time defensive coordinator and some questions there. I think all these secondaries are vulnerable. But the first two teams on the list there, Boone, I think the Rams, badass pass rush. Jared Verse is a total baller. Todd Bowles, for some of his flaws as a defensive play caller, he will bring heat. Right. And that was something that the Texans offensive line really struggled with last year. They really struggled picking up stunts and blitzes. I think CJ Stroud lost the most yards to blitzes or to stunts last year. So some of those games that these two teams like to play on the front line will test this Texans offensive line. So I agree with you. Like, this is the type of secondary schedule where, hey, Nico Collins could be getting like over 100 yards per game in the first 4 weeks. Christian Kirk looks like he's, back in full form. We're seeing something from these rookies, but it's all going to come back to, hey, what they're selling us about this offensive line, where, we got rid of Laramie Tunsil, we got rid of Shaq Mason, some of these guys. Don't worry, though. It's all about communication and coaching. So inferior talent on paper is not going to be a big deal. That will certainly be tested by those two teams in particular.
Yeah, I think, and I mentioned that there's like so many variables to this too. Like, what about if in week 1, Matt Stafford isn't out there or Matt Stafford's not 100% healthy or something, right? And then all of a sudden, this game that could potentially be some sort of shootout takes a much different look if we have Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback, who we know Devonta Adams had his issues with Jimmy Garoppolo in the past, right? So there's a lot of things that go into this stuff. We're kind of coming at it right now from sort of a really general outlook, trying to find these areas where you have 4 pretty good matchups on paper there. Will they all work out to be great? Hopefully, maybe not. Maybe one of them ends up being really difficult, but I think there's enough things pointing us in the direction of that being a pretty good opening slate for Stroud. And like you said, I don't want to sit here and believe all the coach quotes that we get throughout the offseason. I think that's a huge mistake that people make, just assuming anyone with a camera in front of their face is telling them something that's valuable. Like us, you have to go look at the work that we do and make sure that what we're doing actually has some credibility, which I think both of us can stand on that and say that, we're putting out a lot of content that we've proven ourselves over the years. But just believing coaches and the quotes that they're throwing out during the off season is definitely a mistake.
All right, I love it. Some credibility, we'll see. But let's get to the cold quarterback here, which I handled for us, and Caleb Williams was the guy for me here. Look, I'm very optimistic about the Bears' offense over the long term, but I sort of tried to mix like the strength of schedule possibilities here for these players with a little bit of kind of some narratives for some of my guys. And I wanted to go with Caleb Williams here because like you look at last year's results and there were some very generous secondaries on the ledger here in the first 4 weeks for the Bears, the Lions, the Cowboys, certainly the Raiders, even the Vikings. Like I was reading your strength of schedule article for the wide receivers earlier, Boone, and you listed DJ Moore and Roma Dunze as guys that could have like nice early season schedules, the Vikings are a tricky one, right? Because they gave up production, but it wasn't always, but quarterbacks kind of suffered because of sacks and turnovers and things like that. So it is a little tricky. So my thought process here, though, is, I mean, this is a Bears team that there's so much change, right? It's a new offense. Caleb Williams has talked about how much, number one, they have been pushed in training camp by Ben Johnson, but also just the mental load that it's taken to go from whatever the hell was going on last year to what's going on this year in Ben Johnson's offense that's so focused on the details. So, I mean, this damn clip we're seeing, I mean, it's just is brutal. I've hated seeing this all weekend. If you're watching on YouTube with us, but anyways, it's been tough on these guys in training camp. They've had good days. There's been bad days. Some guys have really flashed. So I just think this is one of those units that in the first 4 weeks of the season could struggle to like take the league by storm or something like that. Not for nothing, by the way. They actually have a week 5 bye. And I think this is one of those teams that could benefit from an early bye week. Like, all right, here's what's working. Here's what's not. Let's start trimming the fat. Like maybe let's get Luther Burden or Colson Loveland more ramped up after their bye week, stuff like that. But the other theme of these first 4 week matchups is, you know, the Vikings, again, they throw a lot at you from a pressure perspective, a lot of blitzes. Brian Flores is crazy. Aiden Hutchinson is back for the Lions. Micah Parsons, obviously in the news, of course. He is requested to be traded. He doesn't want to be a Dallas Cowboy anymore. I think by week 3, Micah Parsons is on a fat new deal with the Dallas Cowboys. That's a prediction I'll stand on right now. And of course, Max Crosby's back for the Raiders. So this could be one of those situations where these 3 defenses, Lions, Cowboys, Raiders, don't look good on paper. But if those pass rushes are heating Caleb Williams up, it could be a slow start to the season for the Bears quarterback.
Yeah, and you know, the matchup with the Vikings in week 1, you've hit on it. It's definitely concerning, right? Minnesota has improved on both sides of the ball this year. I definitely think that defense is going to be better. And Caleb had a mixed bag against Brian Flores' defense last year, right? He had one good game, one bad game. Finishes the QB4 overall in their first meeting with the Vikings. The second meeting was all the way down in the QB 23 range. He crushed the Lions, but the Lions had a bunch of injuries, you know, so that's going to be a totally different story this year. But QB5 and QB9 in the weeks he faced the Lions, and that's kind of impressive in a season where he didn't have that many huge games, right? So all those games came against those 2 teams in the second half of the year. You know, you had the coaching staff change there, so you had some flashes from Caleb. I think if he survives that Minnesota game in the opener, those next 3 against the Lions, the Cowboys, and the Raiders, I'm still going to kind of give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I agree with you on almost everything you said there. Lions are going to be healthier. Micah Parsons is going to be out there. I mean, the Joneses are just the worst negotiators across any sport. I don't know. It's just terrible how they approach this. I don't know why they go about it. They upset people, and then they end up paying them huge deals anyway. Anyway, we don't need to spend a lot of time.
Do you know what my buddy EJ Snyder over from Bootleg Football? I saw him basically say, I think the Joneses must view it as the extra dollars that they end up paying in the contract. That's just like marketing. It's just their marketing budget, you know, like they're in the news, keeps them on all the talk shows. I was like, that's a good way of thinking about it. It's just a little extra spend on the marketing department.
Yeah, any publicity is good publicity, I guess. I don't know. It certainly made my view of that team worse, but I guess it's a positive for them that they're, you know, leading so many shows and that we're even talking about them this much right now in a section where we're supposed to be talking about Caleb Williams. But yeah, I agree with you that I don't think people factor in enough, and I've been guilty of this before as well, not factoring in the time that it takes for players to gel, for coaching staffs to get used to the new players that they're working with, for guys to really understand those systems. And to Caleb's credit, you know, maybe since we've seen that video come out and since we heard about some really, really bad practice days, he's had some better ones as well. And some of the other players are coming out and saying he's getting more comfortable. It's going to happen. It's going to be up and down for a little while, and maybe even up and down early in the season. I'm very confident that this offense is going to be one that people want to invest in for fantasy. It's just a matter of how quickly does that happen. And if it takes a little while, if they get off to that slow start, I will be all over buying low on these guys because I think there's a bunch of guys in this offense that are going to have fantastic seasons. And I think Caleb is one of them as well. We'll see how long it takes for him to get completely comfortable in the regular season when he's going against other defenses.
Yeah, and honestly, like the week 6 to 10 schedule, Washington, that's a secondary that you can pick on. New Orleans, they're a team in transition. Baltimore, that might not be so fun. Cincinnati, and then the New York Giants. And I feel like the Giants defense I could go either way on. Just depends. Do you want to look at the secondary? Do you want to look at the pass rush? So yeah, this is definitely I think it's one of those seasons for Caleb that on the whole, like in the long run, I do want to bet on this offense. I am going to be betting on this offense. Like I want to take Rome Odunze where he goes. I really like Colson Loveland and Luther Burden as late round draft picks. And Caleb Williams is a guy that I think could be a QB1 candidate. But certainly if we're talking about formats where you want to get off to a hot start, guillotine leagues, he's probably not one of those guys that I just like go to bat with right away.